Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Paul, and in this RedGamingTech.com video, we're going to be discussing a whole bunch of stuff concerning Ryzen and Vega. Starting things out, we'll be talking about the Capsaicin and Vega, because there are rumours, murmurs if you will, that Vega will be once again debuted at the Capsaicin event, and we're going to start learning a lot more information about its architecture. We'll get into that in a moment, and then we'll be finishing the video with the largest, bulkiest part of the news, and that will be Ryzen. This concerns the performance of the CPU. Yes, more benchmarks have leaked their way onto the internet. Leaks as well from retailers who have put out things such as box art, the pre-order date, and a lot of other stuff besides. And then we're going to be finalising the video with yet more information about motherboards. So, I guess the first things first is to talk about Capsaicin. So, last year, we had Capsaicin, which showed off a couple of interesting pieces of technology. Radeon Pro Duo, and perhaps the most interesting for many of you, gamers especially, was the Polaris 10, which of course made its way into the 470 and 480 respectively. So, what are we going to be seeing with this year's Capsaicin? Now, I'll read out a couple of cherry-picked quotes. GDC is where developers not only shine, but share how they create everyday gaming magic from raw code, technology, and imagination. On February 28th, we're beginning the day with the always spicy Capsaicin livestream, but the fiery feasts are best experienced when accompanied with something cool and creamy to satisfy the palate. Yep, I'm not even going to make a comment on that, to be honest with you. I'll leave that to your imagination. What goes on the AMD offices. This year at GDC, join us on the 28th for our Capsaicin livestream and our cream developer sessions. I'm sorry, I'm being childish. Insightful and inspiring talks focus on rendering ideas and the new paths forward, driven by game industry gurus from multiple companies including Epic and Unity. The Capsaicin livestream kicks off at 10:30 AM from Ruby Sky and features a packed show highlighting the hottest new graphics and VR technologies propelling the game industry forward. The cream developer sessions will start shortly after at 2:30 PM. And then there's a lot of information regarding the times and the dates of the schedule. So the first thing we should note is Vega is not explicitly mentioned. It does not say Vega will be shown off at this particular time and we will learn about all of this product roadmaps. However, I think it would make some logical sense for us to at least either get once again a glimpse of the silicon, perhaps a demo of the hardware, perhaps get more information about the product roadmap. And I don't just mean like, okay, well, we're going to see, Polaris move to Vega and Vega to Navi and Navi is going to... No, I mean something more substantial. For example, what's going to happen with the RX 400 series versus the 500 series? What's going to happen with Vega 11? Is there going to be Vega 10, Vega 11 released? Is Vega 11 going to do the rumour and basically do a replacement of Polaris 10? So essentially we're going to move to the 500 series. I would like some clarifications on this stuff. I feel that would be good. Unfortunately, we're just going to have to wait and see what the event holds. And last year's Capsaicin was pretty cool. I would encourage you all to check it via live stream. Obviously, steadfast your expectations because they've not said, this is going to happen or this is going to happen. And one of the reasons behind that, maybe they're trying to work in the background, trying to show off more stuff. So maybe, the developers of the silicon are working at 3 AM or whatever every night to try and ready the hardware enough to show off some live demos. You just don't know what's going on in the background. Now, let's move on to Ryzen. And before I do, I'm going to thank a couple of people who have messaged us. Yeah, okay. So I'm going to read out a bunch of names. I'm not going to attribute one person to one particular piece of news because in many cases multiple of you have messaged different aspects of the same piece of news, or there are so many of you that it would take me too long to do it. So I can only apologise and thank you all in bulk. So Ryan, Rod, Curtis, Henrik, Xavier, Christopher, Anton, Ilaz, and finally Kate. So some of you have messaged us on Facebook, some of you have messaged us via email, which is contact@redgamingtech.com. You can also message me directly, which is paul@redgamingtech.com if you prefer, and my Twitter and everything else is also linked in the video description, although I am terrible at checking Twitter at the moment. Let's get back on with the show. So, performance. There is no point in having a processor without, well, you know, it processing. I've given you a revelation there, have I not? So videocards.com have managed to stumble upon some 3D Mark Firestrike physics scores. We'll get to those now, and then we'll talk about some more benchmark stuff in a second. So what they have done is pretty simple. They have put a compendium, I feel that's the best way of putting it, of different Intel CPUs as well as different Ryzen processors all together, and we can start seeing what the physics score is. Now, it's important to note that physics is running across multiple CPU cores. Now, typically, if you're benchmarking a graphics card, physics scores are just like the devil. You don't care about the overall score, you care about the GPU score. Because, after all, that's what matters when you're benching a GPU. For example, otherwise, you're going to start getting screwy results if you're benchmarking, I don't know, like a 1050 Ti against a GTX 1080. The 1050 Ti's overall scores are going to be disproportionately higher than what they should be if you're benchmarking with, like, I don't know, a 6950X, just because of the physics. You get where I'm going with this. Anyway, so there are 3 distinct CPUs. One is an 8-core, one is a 6, and the final one is a quad. What you can start noticing, however, is that the performance of these processors, in terms of the overall, speed, is very competitive. All of the Ryzen CPUs are very close to one another in single-thread performance. Now, Kaby Lake definitely offers higher clock speeds, which is very important to note, because obviously, if you have higher clock speeds, especially for applications which rely primarily on lower threads, then that processor intrinsically is going to be faster. But the various improvements that AMD have made in terms of IPC, which is quite literally the amount of instructions the processor is performing per clock, is really starting to counter what Intel's previous architecture has managed to achieve. And on top of that, we don't know, of course, other factors with these physics scores that are popping up. For example, one of the benchmarks that we discussed a while back was, I believe, on an A320 with really loose memory timings. Really loose. In fact, they were so loose that, quite frankly, I would say that they were hampering the performance quite substantially. So if we start breaking it down per core, yes, of course, the 7700K, which has a pretty large clock speed advantage, it's like running at 4.8 in one of the benchmarks. Yes, obviously that's going to ruffle stomp a core that's running at 3.3, whether that's a 6800K that's running at 3.6, or whether it's a Ryzen CPU which is running at 3.3. That's just pretty obvious. But that's irrelevant. The fact of the matter is that AMD CPUs are roughly in line with what you would expect to Intel, which is absolutely phenomenal. And another chap on Reddit, who is named Not Practical, which is a cool name, to be fair, has benchmarked, well, not benchmarked, he hasn't grabbed them himself, but he's once again shifting through the 3D Mark Firestrike physics score database, and once again put together a set of scores, including a 1700X OC overclocked at 4 GHz, which, to be honest, is not exactly extravagant by any means from what we're hearing. All of this leads me to believe that the processors will perform pretty well with certain tasks. There are some caveats there. Obviously, certain tasks is not all tasks, and I'm still not going to say this is going to be the best processor ever, because ultimately I'm still, somewhat skeptical until I actually get silicon and we get proper benchmarks. But, he says, if the pricing is accurate, we'll get to that in a second, and these scores are even in ballpark accuracy, so let's say 5 to 10%, I consider that a ballpark, like 30% is probably a bit much, but let's say 5 to 10%, I'm pretty happy with that. Like, if you get a CPU that costs like $320, it's 8 cores, and it performs within spitting distance of a high-end i7 from Intel, which costs like 2 to 3 times the amount, no one has the right to complain. No one. And I feel that that's probably about the best way to put it. There are a couple of other bits and pieces we should probably get into as well. Another retailer this is a Belgian one called centralpoint.be, have plopped up, or had plopped up, I just want to clarify, they have once again removed it. I'm not quite sure how that happens. Now, there are a couple of feelings I have with this. One, oops, the webmaster screwed up and it wasn't supposed to go live, and they basically just didn't put in the date properly of, when things go live, but the publication date. Or, not so oops, it was purposeful. It's because they knew that means their website is going to basically get traffic, because their website has been linked on like multiple different websites, and obviously enthusiasts are going to it and they think, ooh, shiny, and they remember that for the future. You could decide whether it's A or whether it's B. Anyway, the Belgian website, as I said, centralpoint.be, have listed the prices in euros to be basically identical to the US pricing if you factor in the exclusion of VAT, which is absolutely phenomenal. This is good, because this either means that various retailers are copying one another across different regions in terms of the pricing, or they are the recommended pricing. So, once again, I'm hedging my bets. I am saying there's a possibility that this could still not be 100% accurate, but it's looking increasingly like it's accurate. The tasty part about it, the tasty nummy thing, is that this particular retailer also listed the date. And they said that the SKUs listed will be in stock on February 28th, which coincidentally is the same date as Capsaicin. That's kind of interesting, right? Anyway, I guess the next one to talk about is, motherboards. So, more information about motherboards has popped up. We've got yet more information in terms of the aesthetics of the boards. They do look rather beautiful, at least in my opinion. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a motherboard, so if that's the type of thing that you think's pretty, then, well, by all means, you're probably like me, kind of geeky, and if not, well, yeah. But anyway, I personally really like the minimalistic design of more modern motherboards. I think they look rather nice. It means you get to see more artwork, more detail, and they just look darn cooler. Plus, as well, to be fair, that also means reliability is a bit better. I won't go through the specifications of the board because I think it's pretty well established. You've got the usual plethora, the usual array of, USB slots. You've got the M.2 slots and the, whatever else on the board. Most of them are very similar to one another. And until we actually get reviews, and the reviews are, of course, once again, very important because that will tell us, like, board stability, BIOSes, that type of thing. It's kind of difficult to really meaningfully, at least, distinguish one board from another. Next thing I would like to go through is a couple of questions I've actually had regarding Ryzen. Now, I would hasten to add I do not have a review sample, but a couple of folks, I won't mention their name, have messaged me regarding, like, what do I think of overclocking. So, what do they mean by that is, like, do they feel that, let's say, the 8-core or an 8-core processor is going to overclock less than, let's say, a 4-core processor? The answer is, honestly, no one knows. I have heard some in the industry say that they will, but then a load of people said, no, that's actually completely inaccurate, that's not the case at all. And supposedly these are folks who have tried out engineering samples, who have sources within AMD. So basically, some people are saying possibly, a lot of people are saying no, it means absolutely nothing, and it really comes down to the cooling and silicon lottery, and of course, the actual processor you're going for. In the end of the day, if you get something like an 1800X, there's probably a bloody good chance it's going to overclock better than, I don't know, a really low-end Ryzen. Like a Ryzen 3 1200 or something like that. There's a possibility that's the case. Ultimately, we just don't know. And this is kind of moving into another territory, and the reason I keep saying in videos that, like, if you're unsure of these processors at all, and I'm not meaning this in, like, a negative way, I'm not trying to say that, the processors are bad or anything like that, I'm just saying, if you're unsure about, like, clock speeds, performance, and you're interested in overclocking, or you're buying them for a specific purpose, like, let's say for the sake of this video, that I have two demographics. One, gamers only, and two, power users. So gamers only are going to be folks who don't care about running Photoshop, they don't care about Adobe Premiere, they don't care about compiling code, they don't do 3D rendering, they do nothing else other than really use their PC for gaming, and, maybe the odd other thing here or there, but nothing that's really processor intensive. Then there might be, John, who perhaps does a lot of 3D work. Perhaps he uses Blender, perhaps he uses 3ds Max, maybe he uses Photoshop, maybe does coding, maybe does 3D rigging or whatever the case. And in his spare time, he does a lot of gaming. So the thing is, usage scenarios become a thing there. I would argue that if you're in the second category and you do a lot of general work, a lot of power user work, you're probably going to want the number of CPU cores, the highest number of CPU cores available anyway. However, if you're not and you're a gamer only, it becomes a lot trickier because then we don't really know how the performance scales across cores, like what the clock speeds go to. Is it a case where, for example, the 6-core processor is the sweet spot because perhaps it overclocks really nicely, perhaps it has perhaps it's the price performance, you've got those extra spare cores or spare threads if games do start heavily utilizing DX12 in the next couple of years. One good thing about AM4, do remember, is it's going to be around for a while. AMD have confirmed that the next Zen Plus, is also going to be using AM4. So it's not like your motherboard is going to be out of date. With that said, of course, new motherboard technology might come in. So, if in a year's time PCIe 4 becomes normal, and Ryzen, Plus becomes available, technically, yes, you could reuse the same motherboard. However, I'll ask you this, would you really want to reuse the same motherboard with, the new graphics cards? I probably wouldn't, but that's just me. I'm a glutton for punishment. So yeah, and obviously, and I don't really want to bang on about it too much, you've also got memory timings, memory clock speeds, and all this stuff that you have to kind of take into consideration. There's a lot more that I could actually say on this, to be fair, and I'm probably going to try and squeeze out a video over the next couple of days. I say try and squeeze out because, well, I'm still finally moving. I've got some internet issues at the new place. I won't go into the details, but let's just say the internet isn't quite how I expected it to be. And so my schedule at the moment is quite literally running over to Amis to record videos or to transfer files via USB because the internet is so shit. And I'm trying to sort it out in the back end, and it probably means I'm going to have a new install of an entire new line specifically for me because the internet is that bad. How bad? Talk about 800 kbs. No, I don't mean upload. I mean literally total. So if I'm lucky, I'm getting 60, 70 kb per second upload. And that's if I'm doing extremely well. The stars align and, I'm blessed with the internet. Otherwise, I'm pretty much lucky to be, streaming YouTube at 480p. I'm not kidding. That's not good. So that needs to be resolved. And however, I am still doing a couple of benchmarks. The RX 470 that we were sent is almost finished. We've got another graphics card that's also being done. We've got a PC we're benchmarking. We're working on some DDR4 memory, which is going to be arriving in the next few days. And we've got a lot of other stuff. And still I'm trying to edit the MSI event. So that's also a thing. Anyway, so yeah, basically I'm working on stuff in the background. So I can only apologise for being a bit screwy in my schedule. But hopefully you've enjoyed the stuff anyway. I'll see you soon. Take care of yourselves. Bye for now.